Okay, so you're probably wondering what the heck happened last night in the Canadian federal election. And trust me, YouTube is filled with political scientists and panels who are dissecting the election results and going riding by riding and looking at each leader precisely what they said and what they didn't. And in this video, I'm just going to cut through the noise because I consider myself pretty average, a Canadian voter, and I can tell you why, help you understand why Pierre lost this election, why the Conservatives lost the election, and why Mark Carney won. But before I do, folks, my name is Christopher. I host the Open Minds podcast where I explore the world's biggest topics with genuine curiosity because many are afraid to for fear of being canceled. So if you're liking my content, hit that subscribe button, like, share, tell all your friends. Now, folks, before I go into the dissecting of what happened, I just want to put it out there that when you go into the numbers, the Conservatives actually grew the number of seats in the House by 24 seats, more than the Liberals and any other party, and certainly much better than their last showing at a federal election, meaning that not all was terrible for the Conservatives. They did do some good things there. I think the popular vote also increased for the Conservatives by 7.6 percentage points. Now, a lot of people have said that Canada just did not want another ideologue who's simplifying large issues and making it very much attack-based. You see, Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau, they were great at attacking each other and sticking to very simple slogans. And had Justin Trudeau still run in 2025, I believe the Liberals would have been decimated. And it's not necessarily because people wanted Pierre Poilievre, it's because people just did not want Justin Trudeau. And the Liberals masterfully did a great job in forcing Trudeau out at the end of the year and getting Mark Carney in, and I'll get to Mark Carney in a second. But really, I don't know if people were voting for Pierre Poilievre if he were running against Trudeau. It was more so, I just don't want another 4 years of Justin Trudeau. Now, I'm going to get into something, and it's totally my ignorance and my bias. So please call me out in the comment section below if anything what I'm about to say is incorrect. But from my vantage point, someone who watches media, who consumes government publications, etc., and studies government, I think Pierre Poilievre missed the mark in focusing on major cities like the GTA, the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, because there are many issues right here in the GTHA that if Pierre Poilievre had come down here more often and was filmed on the streetcar, waiting in traffic, taking the subway, there's a delay or something. And he showed that he fully understood the big city issues here, that, he would become a more relatable to those that were off put by voting conservative. You know what I mean? I remember years ago, Stephen Harper, when he was campaigning, he went to Kennedy Station in Scarborough pledging more money for subways in Scarborough. Now, of course, it was a political tactic, 100%, but it got at least voters familiar with a party leader that they probably only saw on the CBC, the national late at night in Ottawa. He was actually in Scarborough in their subway station, and I'm sure that meant something. For Pierre Poilievre, the way I saw him on media was that he was at the Calgary Stampede. He was wearing a cowboy hat and cowboy boots. He was in blue collars places across Canada, which would always vote conservative, especially with Trudeau in office. And so I got the sense that he was only going to the areas where he knew there was a strong conservative base, which is, again, smart. But really, it's the moderates, it's the undecided, it's the ones that would flip conservative in an otherwise staunchly liberal riding that you need to focus your energy on. You look at the graphs, you look at the maps. All of the Greater Toronto Hamilton area, by and large, went liberal. And I don't know, again, if Mark Carney was taking the subway, but I'm thinking for Pierre, being relatively young, being relatively unknown, despite 20 years on the Hill, appealing to the average voter in the Greater Toronto Hamilton area would have gotten people who, again, would have normally voted Liberal probably to then consider the Conservatives if Poilievre was doing some things in the big cities, not just holding rallies, right? Like with the Canada backdrop, the flag backdrop. I think that's great for your base. But again, to get the moderates, you need to do something for the moderates that you may not have done in the past. And so you combine that with very simplistic slogans of axe the tax, build the homes, fight the crime, whatever it was. Like, I think people were tired of sloganism by the end of Justin Trudeau's 9 years in office, that they weren't necessarily okay with more ideologically driven politics, on top of which a leader, relatively young, very young guy, very well spoken, they just don't see him in their communities as much. And I'll tell you, in the greater Toronto Hamilton area, I don't want to make this all about big cities at all, but there are very specific issues here in the greater Toronto Hamilton area that would appeal to, like, that people would vote conservative if the Conservatives made a very concerted effort in visibility in the big cities. And then there's Mark Carney. Okay, so Mark Carney is not Justin Trudeau by a long shot. Mark Carney, while he wrote values, and he has very similar values, he wrote the playbook pretty much for Trudeau's policies. Yes, on a policy level, I could see a lot of similarities, but in terms of demeanor, in terms of poise and positioning, they are worlds apart, and that's what the voter base cares about. You know, it takes a very strange individual, maybe unique individual, to go through public policy like line by line, like me all the time on this channel. But it takes a very unique individual to do that and then start sussing out, like, okay, well, Trudeau's policy on, medical assistance in dying is this. And, like, you know what I mean? It takes a very unique individual to do that. The vast majority of people only look at the individual and how poised they are, what their character is, the words they use. And Mark Carney, whether you like him or not, he has this statesman-like appearance. He has this calm demeanor. He has this, shoulders back. He's got his arms in his clasped together. Like, Trudeau was so over the top sometimes. Like, at times he was yelling and beating us over the head with, like, platitudes or whatever. And that worked well for a Pierre Poilievre, because Poilievre could meet that energy. But Mark Carney, he's just a much more calm and poised leader to a Pierre Poilievre. So when Poilievre started his campaign, when Carney was chosen, Poilievre started putting out things like carbon tax Carney. And that just doesn't sit well, again, with the moderates, the undecideds who decide the election, because what they're looking for is stability. And then you add in Trump and the tariffs and all that, and suddenly people, again, they're not really invested in the policy. They're not going to open Mark Carney's values book and go through it line by line. They're looking at the individual, because everyone, they have it up to here, right? Cost of living is higher, prices are higher, their salaries aren't increasing. So all they want is a calm, poised leader that can fight against Trump and his tariffs. And Poilievre's brand just did not resonate with those individuals, the undecideds. And you don't have to believe me, you look at the election results and you see, again, many areas going red that could have gone blue. I'm telling you, they could have gone blue. And the last thing I'll say is politics is all about timing. And man, the timing for the Liberals was impeccable. They chose the right leader at the right time, and they saw the writing on the wall with Justin Trudeau. Now, had this been just a few months ago, had this been, 6 months ago, Pierre Poilievre would be our prime minister right now. Not because, again, people like him, but because people were just tired of Justin Trudeau. And the political winds changed in such a way that allowed Mark Carney to win. Now, here's the question for the Liberals, which is very important, okay? The Liberals have had 9 years of Justin Trudeau's policies that do not resonate with the general public, period. Like, people just don't like a lot of the policies that the Liberals put forward, leading to the F Trudeau movement, which is real in Canada, and the Liberals will have to do a reckoning of rebranding the policy, the small p policy, on what they're going to pursue. Now, I don't know if this is going to be as big an issue with someone like a Mark Carney, because a Mark Carney, that calm, poised demeanor, can get away with things that Trudeau may not have because of his demeanor. So it remains to be seen if there's going to be major policy shifts from the Liberals. I anticipate there may be some. I don't think Mark Carney is going to be so over the top with things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, LGBTQ. I don't think he's going to be that over the top with it. I think he's probably going to focus a lot on building infrastructure and Canada-made projects. And I think there's going to be continued support for the military. I do think that there are going to be concerns for surveillance, privacy, individual civil rights and freedoms. But I'd be curious to know if Mark Carney is as adamant about getting his point across in the same way as Justin Trudeau. I think Mark Carney might actually be, I don't know, he might be more okay with people disagreeing with him. Whereas with Trudeau, I felt like if you disagreed with him, you were this like terrible person. You know what I mean? So those are my just general thoughts of what went wrong for Pierre Poilievre. And for the Conservatives going forward, come down to the Greater Toronto Hamilton area. There are big issues down here, and I'm telling you, you can win the ridings in and around the GTHA if your message resonates and if you're on the subways and streetcars and if you're seen in the communities. People will really give you a lot more of their time. It's not nearly set in stone that the big cities go red all the time. But I'd be curious to know what you think. Let me know in the comment section below. What do you think went well and didn't go so well for the Conservatives? Let me know in the comment section below.